Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be a very special call today with Mr. Matt Davis, the founder of the Patriot Party podcast. And Matt's got just a tremendous background talking about what's going on with the Constitution, what's going on in our country today. I do realize, in respect to our international audience, I realize you guys follow American politics. It really isn't so much about politics as much as it is about thought and where things are at. And Matt, your show is focused on unbiased news. How do you keep it unbiased without ever saying, "Hey, here's how I really feel myself"? How do you do that? First question.
It gets tricky. Not only do we have a podcast, but it's also the start of a grassroots movement, which we can get into in a minute. The podcast part, which is we believe that true change in this country, which we believe this country needs it, per two new studies that speak directly to it. And these two new studies, I don't like either one of them. The first one says 1 in 3 Americans believe that it's going to take violence to get us back on track politically. This is a nonviolent movement, a nonviolent reset for the country. The second statistic is, did you realize that less than 1 in 5 adult American citizens can name the 3 branches of government? Yeah, because it's a surprising fact. And I tested it. I tested it on people with their master's degree, doctorates, everybody, and they could name 2. They couldn't name 3. This movement, which the podcast is part of it, the podcast helps with the first part. We believe for true generational change, which we like to say, we're not about future elections. We're about future generations. This is not something about this political party or that political party. This movement is nonpartisan at its core. So we believe for true change, it has to start at the top with leadership, and it has to start at the bottom with the grassroots movement and meet in the middle. So we have a 3-pronged approach. The first one, which we're doing right now, is about awareness, media literacy, political awareness, what we should hold our politicians to, trying to bring you the truth. Now, me personally, not the movement itself, I'm a common sense conservative, which these days is about like a 1980s Democrat. But that I may give my opinion on something as I'm reporting. I report the facts and then break it down per the Constitution, the truth, and I may give my opinion. But the movement itself, so the first prong, which we're doing now, is about awareness, which is what the podcast is about. The second prong, which we're working on, we just interviewed a hotshot lobbyist and lawyer in D.C. about opening up a D.C. location last week. For the second part, or the headquarters of the second part, which will help attack this lack of knowledge base on how the government runs and how to hold our politicians to the oath that they took. We're going to open up a nonprofit that is focused on civic education, probably starting in high school, to help teach people how to view things as being constitutional, what the Constitution is, how to hold our politicians as we the people believe they should be because we the people put them into office. Then with that nonprofit movement, we're going to also start challenging, and we've talked to some lawyers around the country, some of these unconstitutional laws, because ambiguous laws breed bureaucratic overreach and judicial activism, which is what we're facing right now. It's a big reason for lawfare, a broken criminal justice system, the erosion of the Constitution, And it's a big reason this country is where it is right now. And we're at a precipice between violence, or we're trying to come in with a nonviolent movement, a nonviolent reset. So the second prong is to start challenging some of this low-hanging fruit, which I bet you, because these unconstitutional laws started being written in the early 1800s, is ambiguous laws. So that's why we've got judges now on the Insurrection Act and the Comitatus Act and all those are saying, I believe Congress meant. Well, if you believe and you're a federal judge and you don't know, then we as citizens sure as heck don't know. Which in essence means the laws themselves were written ambiguous on purpose and they're unconstitutional. So we're going to go in and we're going to start challenging some of these laws. And we're going to put some pressure on the legislative branch. Fix it or lose it and start over. Then we're going to come in on the third ring once this movement has got enough momentum, which is growing by leaps and bounds. Just the past month, our audience on our Patriot Party podcast, or the Patriot Party, it's not podcast, it is a podcast, but it's not podcast in the title, has our average audience has grown 10,000% in the last month. So it's catching on. So the third prong, so we got awareness, then we got education and somewhat of a pressure campaign, challenging things in federal court, trying to repeal them, amend them. Then what we want to do is we want to hit them with a petition and these court cases. So we're providing pressure and a media campaign and try to get legislation put in that says all new and existing laws have to go through a independent constitutional council outside of non-governmental to stamp these laws constitutional before they can go through and be passed. Because we have got to get back to what this country was founded on, because we have politicians like Tim Kaine, who was Hillary Clinton's running mate, a senator, almost vice president, who says verbatim, rights are granted by the government. No, that's what we fought against in the American Revolution. The monarch said rights are granted by the monarch and parliament. So if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. Let's learn, let's make some change that lasts.
I think, Matt, that there's 535 people that technically represent 350 million. I think that's one problem. I think that number's kind of a little out of control, a little weighted too heavily to the minority versus the majority. But along that line, and you just said it, about not only about Tim Kaine, okay, but about some of the other politicians in both parties that don't necessarily know the Constitution and maybe have never even bothered to read it. One of the things that I admired about Newt Gingrich was the fact that they laminated everything and stuck it in their breast pocket so they could refer to it. Now, it wasn't the Constitution, it was the talking points of the Republican Party at that time. But don't you think we need to get back to that basic fundamental, here is the Constitution? Vince Lombardi, gentlemen, this is a football when the Packers are 1 and whatever, and 2 years later they win the first Super Bowl. Like, back to the basic fundamentals of what founded this great country that we have, that right now is in turmoil.
Yeah, and you said a lot. And this movement is starting with me. I am not so naive that I think that I will be able to accomplish this in my lifetime. There are so many things beyond what I'm telling you, but right now they're pie in the sky. They're just on paper. The things I'm telling you are in motion. The other things, this is 100-and-something year movement. We don't want to just stop with legislation, but that's why I think it would be simplest, because and I don't mean this in any disrespect, but the saying, keep it simple, stupid, that is what you have to use even when you're dealing with politicians. And I've spoken with many people who deal with politicians. You have to keep it direct. You have to keep it simple. If you overcomplicate it, people will get confused or you will lose something. That's why I think the simplest method for the first three prongs is to get legislation in place to where an independent non-governmental council has to approve new and existing laws as constitutional, because that will start to fix the foundation. These laws are our foundation, and it's crumbling because it's made out of sand, because they're unconstitutional. So many of them are. Then, like you said, we have to change, and that's why we want to start. I think middle school is a little young, but high school would probably be good, a little bit before Charlie Kirk got to them in college, because they already, I think, were biased with media misinformation. So that's why I'm thinking high school would be a good age. But I'm not trying to come at it, or we're not trying to come at it from a conservative perspective. We're coming at it from a constitutional perspective. But we have to. I was speaking with someone the other day, and they were talking about these middle schoolers having to memorize the Constitution. That's not practical. When you're done with the test, you're going to forget it. So we have to implement trying to think constitutionally, whether it be in games on a mobile app. We have thought that's something to come. We have to, I think, make it mandatory where government employees, maybe they have to learn how to gauge things with the Constitution. Maybe there's a laminated copy put up in every division of the government, where if you think something's off, point to it. I don't necessarily know where this movement will be in 50 years. I'm just trying to picture the first decade. But the thing that's cool with this movement that's got me so engrossed with it is because I'm an entrepreneur by nature. And normally I'll open a business, delegate it to somebody that will at least run it at an 80% efficiency rate of that I would run it myself, and then go on to the next business. But with this, there is no stop. I can be as creative and grow it as much as possible. I've even got an idea, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, with podcasters and something called Truth News, which will be on the profitable side, because everything can't be on the nonprofit side. I'm also not naive enough to think that we live in a capitalistic society. It takes money to move things. So I got to worry about making money, and I got to worry about the nonprofit. Sure. And I got to try to bring this and resonate everything and push it forward. But it's limitless. Where this can go, there are no limits on the profit and nonprofit side.
It brings up another question or talking point, because we're really two guys having a conversation more so than we're doing a podcast. But at the end of the day, we're two guys having a conversation. I'm enjoying this immensely. I hope you are as well.
Absolutely.
But we're about to be 250 years old as a nation. And we were talking off camera about, like, my nephew, for example, is living in London. And he called me the other night, and for his birthday, he went to a restaurant that's been a restaurant for 700 years. And you put that in perspective. That's just London. That's not the Middle East. That's not some of the other countries, China and Russia, other parts of the world that have thousands of years of history, as does Europe, obviously. But when you look at it, we're referred to sometimes as the Great Experiment. And along those lines, we still see people, the people who are coming to our country legally, by the way, okay? Let's not even get into the other part of that. But the people who are coming here legally, my own wife, by the way, my wife's an immigrant. Okay, she came here legally. We went through 3 years where she couldn't leave the country and visit her family back in Canada. She did. The clock restarted. Okay, it's a flawed immigration process, frankly. Okay, but at the end of the day, we're law-abiding citizens. I wanted my wife to be here legally with a green card. She is. Okay, and here's my question or my point on this, and I love your thoughts. There are people still coming to America and doing very well. First generation entrepreneurs, second generation entrepreneurs. It comes to mind a friend of mine whose dad was a Egyptian soccer player on their Olympic team way back, came to Minneapolis, washed dishes so his kids could grow up in America. And 3 of his kids became medical doctors, another became a successful entrepreneur. I'm not sure about the 5. I'm not sure what happened to the 5th one. But my point is, there's still people coming here because they want what so many people in America that were born here just take for granted. They want that opportunity, that hope and opportunity. I sound like Barack Obama, right? But they want that some of our kids just take for granted, that their kids are going, hey, I'm going to come here. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to get an education. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to achieve, or I'm going to become an MD, or whatever it happens to be. Point being, the American dream is still alive. But is it alive for people looking in from the outside, as opposed to the people who are here that somewhat take it for granted that we've got the greatest show on earth? We just have to start to appreciate this amazing blessing that we have and stop screwing it up by not obeying the Constitution. I don't know if there's a question in there or not, but certainly a lot to talk about.
I have an answer. I don't know I definitely have an answer to what you were talking about, or at least a response. Yeah. First, let me say, you knowing somebody, my great-grandmother migrated over in 1300, and then my grandmother she was from England, and she met my grandfather when he was deployed for Vietnam or something, and they met, and she comes over here. So I come from a long line of immigrants. As far as the American dream, I think somebody great to talk about. Now, you don't have to believe in his ideologies, but one of the great things about America, or at least supposed to be before all this violence, is everybody is supposed to have their own opinion. And then if you want to debate it, that's fine. One of the people that's a prime example of what you were saying is Vivek Ramaswamy. He's a second or a first generation immigrant. His parents came over. His dad works in a factory, goes to law school at night. Vivek graduates valedictorian, goes to Yale Law, I believe, and ends up starting a multi-billion-dollar business from the ground up. Super smart guy, super smart guy. I think that people that are born here, they take it for granted. It's like I've been talking about MAGA for a while, saying that the movement is righteous. We've just got to disassociate it from any political party. So there's no agenda with MAGA. Make America great again. If you can find something wrong with that, you might not need to live here. But that's my point. So I put out a video, food for thought, about MAGA and MAHA being completely disassociated from any political party, and that being how to make it righteous for a larger majority of people. And I got responses on social media. Can you tell me when America was ever great? And I'm sitting here thinking, if I got to tell you that, you don't have a clue, maybe you should try another country. I think these people, I mean, look at the people who are coming in illegally. They're dying. Some of them drowning, and their kids are dying trying to get to this country. If we didn't have something that was great, people wouldn't be giving up their lives. People wouldn't be spending tons of money to move here and open businesses here. I think when people are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and I know people are going to say, there's poor and there's this and that there. Poor in America is different than poor in Ethiopia.
Oh, yeah.
Or poor in El Salvador, or poor in Honduras. And these people, they think they're owed the world, and they don't appreciate anything. And these people who have to work to get over here, or who have spent time over in the third world countries, they know what they have.
Exactly. We see that the same, because I see it all the time. I see it in some of my clients with my insurance business. They came here and they'll work 97 hours a week, and they'll live 3 generations in one house, and everybody in the family has a role in the business, and they got each other's back. And then I talked to some American friends of mine that their kids are going like, I hate America. To your point, there's 166 countries, I think, in the United Nations. Pick one, because this one's not. We got plenty of people in line that really want to come here legitimately, honestly, legally, okay, that would like to take your place, and they'll trade tomorrow for what we have. Just stop taking it for granted. And so anyway, we can move on, but we certainly see that the same. I think most people, even whether you're right, whether you're left, whether you're independent, I think you probably see that the same way. We've got the greatest show on earth.
Let me give an analogy before you move on. It's kind of like the sun and rain. If it's always sunny, you don't appreciate the sun.
Yeah.
But if you get rain and then it's sunny, you appreciate the sun. People got to go through hard times to appreciate the good stuff.
I'll give you one on that. Here in Dallas 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was during COVID. It might have been right after, like February or March of that year. We had Snowmageddon. It snowed, and we lost.
You're talking about the one they got here in Louisiana. I saw pictures, and everybody was talking about snow apocalypse or snow apocalypse.
Exactly. And we went out 5 days like that, and like the heat, my house was out. We had no heat. Okay, but my wife's Canadian. I'm from New York. Yeah. My kids played hockey and figure skating. Like, we're used to cold. We didn't like it, but we lived with it anyway. And unfortunately, some people did unfortunately die, and there were some terrible things that happened as a result of that. But I'm thinking, this is like 3, 4, 5 days. Okay, there's parts of the world where, be it from that kind of weather, or a hurricane, or a tornado, or I have friends in the Philippines, for example, that just went through a terrible earthquake in the southern part of the Philippines, that they go through these things and they just say, okay, it is what it is. I lived in Israel for a short time, and I was in 2 bomb scares. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I'm at the bus station in Tel Aviv going up to Jerusalem, and I'm sitting there waiting for my bus. And here comes the Israeli military. They roll out a robot. The robot lays on this package. The package explodes. The leaves blow off the trees. And all of a sudden, in Hebrew, the cops start coming. Okay, move on with your life. Get on the buses. Go. I'm thinking, oh my God, if this was in America, it'd be like, the news would be all over it. Over there, they're just kind of, hey, it's part of life. It's like we live with enemies amongst our borders. It is what it is. Go about your day. So to all of those points, that's where I think we got to get back to with America. Look, there's going to be some rain that falls on all of us, right? It so happens. It's just how do we react and respond? And that's my next question is the response. I'm watching the No Kings marches this weekend. My sister's participating, by the way. So I have a family member who's definitely on that side. She doesn't hide from it. She's on Facebook. So there you go. I got another sister that's an independent, and then there's me. I'm the outlier. But at the end of the day, take our politics out of it. You've got families that are getting divided. And to me, that's a travesty. Like we should never get divided about politics. We should be able to have dialogue. And whether you're left or right, okay, or in the middle, we should be able to have healthy dialogue about our beliefs and be respectful to the other person. Even if I think you're plumb nuts, it's the end of the day, you have a right to be plumb nuts in our country based on that Constitution. How do we get back to that, Matt, where people can have dialogue? And let me give one other for context. I think back to Ronald Reagan, my favorite president of my lifetime, and Tip O'Neill. So here they were at two different parties, two old Irishmen. They were able to get together and have a beer. Politically, they didn't agree on much, but they would get together at the White House occasionally, sit down, have a beer, and say, okay, there's 10 things out there right now, whatever those 10 things were at that time. There's three of them we can agree on. How do we move forward on the three that we're on the same page? How do we do that for the American people who we are here to serve, not to be served by? How do we get back?
Go ahead. Do you want me to answer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you were finished. Didn't want to interrupt you. So I'm going to rewind because you said a lot there, and I'm going to try to unpack it from the beginning. First off, I think one of the issues, because they're so busy now that they don't have time to independently verify or double check what they're hearing in these echo chambers for the media, for social media influencers who are parroting some of the same stuff on the different networks. And people are so engrossed, oh, we're living in the worst time ever, just watch the news. I say to those people, if we had social media and news and everything could be publicized at the push of a button, can you imagine what it would have looked like back during the Spanish Inquisitions or the cowboy days or any of that? It's way worse than what we're living in now. Genghis Khan, the Mongol, and just the stuff that you read about it's almost seems fiction, but it is factual, which is another problem. People want to turn fiction into facts, but that's a whole different story. So I think another problem is people are so caught up, and this feeds off of the media, in today's hot topic or buzzword. How do you feel about abortion? That's a personal opinion. Let's line it up with the Constitution and see what that says. But that's your opinion. And there'll be something else in the news cycle next week or tomorrow. Let's look at some bigger issues. One of the big issues, it's the same in the Capitol chambers, as I'm sure it is with many families, is people are so divided because in order to have a true debate and compromise, there needs to be some kind of common ground. Just like you just said with, okay, we can agree on three of these things. There's got to be some kind of common ground or you're not going to agree on anything. That's the problem right now because you got these far left people that want to push everything for the 4% instead of the 96% of the people who vote, because those 4% have the loudest mouth and get publicized the most and get the most media time and all that. One thing about this movement, one of many good things, is if we give the Constitution as a moral compass and common ground, then everybody is starting with some kind of common ground. So instead of getting hit with some kind of subjective opinion-based, I can't go with your movement because I don't know how you feel on abortion. We have been geared towards holding on to today's hot topic and buzzwords instead of looking at the root of these issues. And we've got to stop being so worried about what's going on today and start looking at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that we've got to have some kind of common ground. And I'm thinking, okay, the Constitution is a timeless document. It speaks to everyone. The Declaration of Independence, let's just look at, you've got people who don't want to say God-given rights because they don't believe in God. Okay, on the Declaration of Independence is unalienable rights given to you by your creator. If you don't believe in God, you can say your mom is your creator or your dad and your mom or whoever. Either way, you're born with these rights. And these founding fathers wrote these documents to be able to be timeless. They were geniuses.
So far ahead of their time.
Yes.
And I have to say, as somebody who's also like yourself, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian. And at the end of the day, these guys had, I believe that they had more than just their moral courage, that they were guided along that to say there has to be a place in the world for people to want to come where they can truly be free and they can do what they want to do and need to do to take care of themselves and their families. There's got to be that place in the world. And that's what I believe. When I read that document, and it's funny because I knew we were having this conversation. So last night I said, I haven't read the Constitution. I'll be honest with you. I haven't probably read it in 10 years. Okay. Last time I think I read it, I was actually in Boston at one of the historic sites. And I was like, wow. And my son was with me, who was then probably was playing hockey up there. He was 11 or 12 at the time. And I said, Fred, you need to start reading this. And it was like, this is words. This is beyond Shakespeare. These words that these guys came up with. And the fact that it still fits 250 years later. But let me come back to another question for you. How do we move forward, okay, with all of the conversation and everybody? Because this is, and maybe this is me being the old guy on the call, okay? These things are great. You can run the space shuttle off of these things, right? You can do all sorts of things. I run my business all over the world with this thing.
I run everything off of it.
It's amazing.
Yes.
But at the same time, it let everybody all of a sudden believe that they were Walter Cronkite or that they were giving the news of the day to the rest of the world. Whatever that news, you see where I am. My dog's on my cover there. I am. But question on that, Matt, is because everybody thinks, hey, I can film whatever's going on here. Cop pulls somebody over, let me film it. Maybe it's a African American cop and he pulls over a white woman. Maybe it's a female cop and she pulls over an African American guy. Maybe it's whatever, right? And all of a sudden, this is newsworthy. Okay. Is it really, or was that officer just doing his or her job and that person was speeding and needed to get a ticket? All of a sudden, we turn it from what would be considered to be good law, if you will, that protects everybody. Maybe that person's going through a school zone at 70 miles an hour at 3:00 in the afternoon and imperiling all children of all races, all creeds, all colors, etc. Right? At the end of the day, that person needs to get a ticket, in my opinion. And if it's me and I'm stupid because I'm distracted, I need to get a ticket. I'm not going to argue that you don't like 64-year-old white guys. Don't give me a ticket, officers. I don't know if I deserve the ticket, write me the ticket. I don't want to pay it, but I will do it. Okay, point being. Okay. Or question. How do we get people back to that moral compass of right and wrong and take politics out of it and go back to the fact that we all want to have safety for ourselves, safety for our loved ones, safety for our homes, safety for our businesses, right? Civil disobedience, fine, but civil disobedience as opposed to people being scared to death to walk down the street because people are protesting. And if you disagree with them, they're going to do what they did to Charlie, or they're going to do what they tried to do to Donald Trump or to others, or to people in Minnesota on the Democratic side that were assassinated as well. How do we get back to that civility? Is it at the school system? Is it in the home?
I think, again, it starts at the bottom and the top. It starts with awareness. It starts with finding commonality. It starts with finding that common ground. I get pushback all the time where, oh, if you're for the Constitution, you're for slavery. No, the 13th Amendment abolishes that. And there's all, we look at the Constitution and the amendments, and I don't mean this sacrilegious, as the Old and the New Testament. The Old Testament kind of outlines things. The New Testament comes in on how you should live, on the rights, on that kind of stuff. So when we use something called the 3 Ps, the Patriot Party principles, when we are gauging our reporting, when we're gauging laws, executive orders, executive actions, policies, and you can get that off the website. It's at thepatriotparty.us. The 3 Ps, it gives you, there's a wealth of knowledge and tools on the website. But what it consists of, it doesn't consist of the original Constitution. It consists of the 27 amendments. It consists of 5 or 6 basic constitutional doctrine, like void by vagueness, where it says any law written should be able to be understood by an average American of average intelligence. And that's why I'm saying, if you've got top level federal judges saying we don't know, then we sure as heck don't know. And why are these things 1,000 pages long? I think that, and then we have the second part of the Declaration of Independence for senators like Tim Kaine and government officials who believe they grant us rights. No, we put you in power. So that's what makes up the 3 Ps. That's how we gauge everything that we gauge. That's what we do with our reporting. And I think we just have to, as a society, and that's why I say, I'm just right now starting something. I am hoping that that I can get somebody to go with this when I'm done with it. And it is a movement that stays intact, because I think it's going to take half a century, a whole century, to implement the changes that we need in order to stay a sovereign nation, the most powerful nation in the world. Some argue with that, but I still believe we are. And in order to stay that way and not implode from within, because our worst enemies aren't out there, I don't believe. We're our own worst enemies. We've let politicians run ramp shot, and that's why they're out here doing the things they're doing and operating unconstitutionally. And I think it's by design. I think the education system doesn't teach our citizens, because it's based on the Prussian model. And if you ever look up the Prussian model, it's what all education in the whole world, communist countries and all, are based on. And it basically is geared, and it's not based on, the research is not based on what's best for a child to learn. It's based on how to make worker bees and then elevate the elite to the elite, to make a bunch of sheeple. And I think it's like that by design. I also think the media constantly saying this is racist and racism and all that is by design to keep everybody separated, because there is order and chaos. They don't want us to come together. So I think it's going to take my movement, maybe a coalition of other movements as well, to start bringing back this knowledge and this patriotism back in the country, where people actually think that they can make a difference. Right now, we have been desensitized to lies. We expect the media and politicians to lie to us. Mm-hmm. Tell us what we want to hear and get elected. That is wrong.
You just touched a nerve there. So let me throw a couple things at you. I'd love your response to. Okay. 1992, Ross Perot, great business guy, right? If people don't know him, some of the younger folks may not know him. Founder of EDS, which he sold to General Motors for billions of dollars, became a billionaire. Then turned around a few years later, started another company, became a billionaire right here in Plano, Texas. Twice this man started billion-dollar enterprises. And he was a patriot. He'd love what you were doing, by the way. Okay. But he started a party called United We Stand America.
Okay.
And I joined that party. I lived in New York at the time. And I was not really a political guy. I voted for Reagan. I was basically a Republican. I was a young business guy. I was busy doing my thing. I really didn't get too caught up in it. Like most people, every 4 years, okay, the presidential election, I'm interested. So Perot decides to run against a guy named Bill Clinton and a guy named George Bush. You may have heard of them, folks. Anyway, they have a debate, and they have this debate, and I'll never forget this. So here, Perot, here's a guy, self-made, multi-billionaire. The other two guys, not poor, okay, successful in their own right. Give them their credit, both successful men. But at the end of the day, they have this debate, and I'll never forget this, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, I flew in here on a commercial airline. I paid for my ticket. I rented a car at Avis. I drove myself to the debate. One guy, billionaire, well-known billionaire. The other two guys, and I forget the exact amount of cars, but one had 92 cars in their entourage, the other had 95. And he said, American people, I have one butt, so do these two guys. Why do they need all of these cars? You're paying for it. And it was like a slap in the face because I was doing very well economically and I was paying a lot of taxes. I'm thinking, why do three guys need 92 cars, 95 cars? And the rich guy, the guy who actually makes his own money, he flew in on United or American and rented a car and went wherever that debate was. And that was such a great point. And I'm still fairly young at that time. I'm early 30s. And I'm thinking, why is there all this government waste? Fast forward, there's a former football coach for Auburn, whose name I'm going to forget, who's now in, I believe he's congressman. And he made a point about our Social Security system that at some point the American people are going to show up in Washington with pitchforks and say, where the heck's my money? Because all the money that's disappeared once again from the Treasury over the years for different things that it wasn't allocated for. It was allocated for people's retirement and it's disappeared into a number of different places. So along those 2 points, Matt, and others, feel free to add because there's so many examples of this. How do we, the people, really let these 535 people know we've had it with the shenanigans? We come together and we say, hey, enough's enough. We want accounting. We want to see the federal checkbook on the internet every single day. Okay. In business, I'm a small business guy. You're a small business guy. We have profit and loss every single day, right? I need to know if I'm making money or losing money, or where, if I am losing money, where am I losing money? Otherwise, I'll be out of business. Why are we as a government allowing these people to spend our tax dollars in such cavalier ways? And then when we find out about it, we go, oh, that's terrible. And I'm talking in hundreds of millions, billions, and even trillions of dollars. How do we get these people's attention that we've had it, besides voting them out of office being the obvious?
I don't think voting them out of office is going to do anything. First, on Social Security, and I may be wrong here, you may be able to correct me, but isn't Social Security kind of a Ponzi scheme?
Pretty much.
Okay.
But it wasn't started that way.
No.
And now
but it's rob Peter to pay Paul now.
Yeah.
Okay. You ask about this money. Before I get to the money, I do want to make a couple of points on what you were saying or expand upon them. One, you were talking about Ross Perot. Let me tell you about another billionaire who I had an encounter with when I was younger and who was very frugal. You know who Sam Walton is?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
The owner of Walmart?
Yeah.
So he had gotten out of, I grew up in North Carolina near the beach. He had gotten away from his security, and I grew up in a small town. So he ends up getting away from his security, coming to our small town. He's in a beat up old rusted pickup truck with overalls on. You'd have never known he was a billionaire. But a lot of times those people like that, maybe not the tech billionaires who get it overnight, but the people who actually have to work for the billions, I'm not saying the other people don't work, but I'm saying like sweat work, that build stuff from the ground up, not just some code. Those people are very frugal people. As far as 1992, I want to point out something for your listeners. Do you realize the last time the Constitution was amended was in 1992? And do you know what it takes to amend the Constitution, to add an amendment or something? It's a 3/4, a supermajority in House, Senate, and all the states. And that's the last time it was amended. As far as the money goes, here's the problem with, I think, the whole online thing. So, yeah, we could do that with some stuff. But let's look at the Pentagon for a minute. For the last 20 years, and we're talking a $4+ trillion budget. For the last 20 years, I want to say 15 or 16. I reported this a year or so ago, so it's been a minute. But I want to say between 14 and 16 of those years, they can't account for 60% of the budget. They can't show where it went. We're talking almost a national deficit that they can't account for. But then they refuse to audit them to make it where they have to account for their spending more. The politicians refuse to do that. I don't know if it's some kickback. I don't know what it is. I wouldn't want to say because I don't know. But when you have money like that going missing and you've got it in an agency where they have black ops and stuff that couldn't be online, all we'd be reading is stuff that's redacted. I think what we've got to do, And this is subjective. This has nothing to do with the start of the movement. But to your question, I think what we have to do, have you heard of the Fair Tax Act? I
Yeah,
think Ron Paul was the one that really pushed it, right?
yeah.
So percentages don't lie. If you make $50,000 and you get a 10% tax, you pay 5,000. If you make 500,000, you pay 50,000. Percentages don't lie. And then we could do away with the whole IRS department. How many departments could we do away with if we worked more efficiently and proficiently and ran the country like a business? See, I've given it a lot of thought, and a lot of people say, well, the country needs to be run like a business, and I believe that's true. I believe we need an entrepreneur in there. Now, I believe we need a self-made entrepreneur to get real change, not somebody that was born with it, somebody that built it from the ground up, like Vivek. I like Vivek. But the only thing that I can find in that statement that's a little false is, yes, we should run this country proficiently and efficiently like a business, but a business inherently is run to grow and get bigger. We don't want the government to get bigger. That's the one part of the business world that we don't want to come into this country, to running this country. But everything else needs to be run like a business. And we need to, what they call, trim the fat. That's what they call it, is trim the fat. We need to trim the fat away. We need to get rid of stuff, replace it with stuff that makes more sense, and get some real financial change so we don't cripple our generations to come and they can't even pay the interest on this daggum deficit.
And I'm glad you said that, because small people, big government, big people, small government. I heard that statement, I don't know, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20, maybe Ronald Reagan said it. I don't really remember even who said it, but it made sense to me then. It's, you cannot have this government that's so big, this blob, because it needs to be supported every single day financially. And who are the people supporting it? Because, see, most people, you go back and you said it earlier. I had a conversation with somebody close to me. I'll be honest with you, it was my other sister. My sister has been independent. Okay. She's still more left, but she's lived in Texas a long time. So we've dripped on her through the years, but she still votes the way that she votes. And so be it. She's entitled to it. But here, to that point, we can have a discussion about it, her and I. My other sister and I can't talk politics at all. Okay. The one down here, at least I can. But I said to her one day, I said, Linda, what product does the government make? And to your point earlier about the fact that Tim Kaine can't answer a question, most Americans don't know that the United States government doesn't make a product. They don't make computers, they don't make cars, they don't make cell phones, they don't make anything, they don't grow anything. They do not have a product. They are a third-party entity, if you think about it. Now, they're needed. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of
Oh,
these.
absolutely.
We don't need government. We need government. We need safe roads. We need the military. There's a lot of things that we do need that need to be done governmentally. But at the end of the day, fact of the matter is, government's got no way to make money outside of taking it from the people who make it. Bottom line. So along those lines, what do we do? And you mentioned the IRS a few minutes ago. What do we do with this taxation system? Okay, what you just described is one remedy. Is there a second remedy that you would suggest? Because a lot of people are frustrated with the tax code. I give you another one fast on that. The guy that ran against Nixon with the whole Watergate thing, and I always forget his name, but he was a senator for many years. He got out of politics. He retired out of politics, and he and his wife bought a bed and breakfast up in Connecticut. And I'll never forget him speaking about this. And I was still at that formative age in my own politics, but I'll never forget him saying, and he was very left wing, very pro IRS, pro taxes. Anyway, long story short, he puts the shoe on the other foot and becomes a small business guy. And he says, if I knew all of the taxes from the local level to the state level to the federal level that I was going to be constantly having to deal with to run a small business, a small in Connecticut, right? Pretty seasonal business, by the way, I would have been a Republican. She says, I didn't realize what we put these people through. So along those lines, and by the way, the Republicans aren't that less guilty of it. They keep seeming to find ways to spend money too, so they don't get a pass, not on my end of the camera anyway. But along those lines, how do we get this tax system so it's equitable, still puts the money where it needs to be, into interstate highway system, military, etc., still kind of safeguards all of our well-being, okay? But at the same time gets rid of the frivolous taxes that eat so many entrepreneurs' capital to grow their business, to become a Ross Perot, to become a Mark Cuban, to become a Jeff Bezos, etc.?
So I'm going to go off the cuff with this because you're bringing issues to me and I'm having to come up with it as we go. I haven't done any research in it. Normally I like to research stuff, so I'm just going to go off the cuff with it. Another thing I believe could save a ton of money in the government is to get back on a merit-based system. Merit-based system that's capitalistic in nature. If you don't do a good job, you're not going to get hired. You're going to go out of business. We got all this huge bloated government, and we've got these employees who go in there and know that they don't have to do a good job and nobody can fire them. It's a lifetime position. So they're just sucking up money. And then you got some people that go in there that could do the job of 10 people that are just sucking up money. So if we made it merit-based, we'd probably clean out 25 or 30% of government expenses on employees and still maybe be more proficient and do a better job.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. I mean, meritocracy. What's built this country from a business standpoint? Meritocracy. So unfortunately, we could be on about 3 calls like this today, Matt, but as we start to wrap up, we're not wrapping up yet. I'm not letting you off the hook that easy because it's too much for one thing. But
we'll do another one. We can definitely do another one.
Definitely need to. So let's talk about podcasting for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're in the podcast world. Now, during the election, okay, Donald Trump, at Barron's suggestion, his son, did, I think it was 104 or 105 podcasts, including obviously Joe Rogan, the biggest of the big, even guys like us with followings. He got on and talked, and he attracted a lot of the under 35 that are not watching CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, including my own kids, by the way. They don't even own TVs. Okay. They listen to podcasts and they listen to everything electronically. Kamala Harris got on, I want to say 4, and my numbers might be off, folks, so don't send me nasty letters, but she got on few. Trump got on a bunch, wisely so on Trump's part, and his young, then high school age son's suggestion. Where's podcasting going in the political realm as we get into 2028?
My podcast, I didn't start until the end of last year. I actually started with a YouTube channel and I was doing live streams and hosting tens of thousands of people, and then ended up getting shadow banned and losing my YouTube channel with all my followers. That's why I have such a small YouTube channel now, because I didn't mess with it for a while. On this censorship, like I would report stories of the Surgeon General in Florida and what he said on COVID, verbatim with sources, and they would violate me for misinformation. I would put videos of Hunter Biden saying Joe Biden was the big guy to the Congress, and they would violate me for misinformation. And I got so fed up with it, I did away with my TikTok. We're talking a lot of followers, did away with all of it because they wouldn't push my stuff out there. I went from growing at 2,500 a month and 1.5 million views a month to maybe 5 or 6 a month. Like, it just dropped. And I got so disgusted with it. I think people like podcasting because it's real. They don't feel like it's made up. It's real live people talking about real live stuff. I would hope that the podcasting, and this is where my idea of truth news comes in, and I'm not going into all the details, but I would hope that podcasting moves in the direction and sets an example to push back on media misinformation and how things should really be reported. What really gets me is when I like these influencers and then they start parroting everything that mainstream media is parroting, and it's not true. I hope that the podcast movement moves more towards the truth, real, raw, uncut truth, and put some pressure on the media. I think I read something the other day where CNN's in flux. They don't know what's going to happen because they're trying to sell them, Warner Brothers or whoever owns them. I hope that this is a push and a wake-up call to stop feeding us misinformation or leaving out half a story to be able to spin it to align with your agenda. Because in my mind, I know that it's a business and you got to get your views, your clicks, and your emotional responses to make your money. But my whole thing is, okay, that's where you have your shows where you can spin the narrative and you have a red and a blue or whatever independent and they're debating back and forth. But what's coming on off the news feed needs to be as close to an unbiased truth as possible. Just the facts of the story. And then your talk shows can spin them however they want to spin them.
Exactly. Exactly. So where do people find out about the Patriot Party, both podcasts, other information? How do they find out if they're interested? Because we have a lot of people that are interested in what's going on in the world right now. And by the way, not just in America, we got a lot of international listeners that follow our politics here. And some of them write to me sometimes or text me and say, what the heck is going on down there? And I say, what are you watching?
Oh, I know. I was looking the other day. You just said something about 160 some countries, and I never looked up how many were in the world, but I know as of a couple days ago, I had listeners in 135 of them.
Yeah, we're about there. We're about there. Yeah, for my Dubai listeners.
Man, I'm telling you, we got some Bangladesh and India and all of them. I mean, we got more listeners in India than we do in the U.S.
World's oldest democracy.
Yeah, it's resonating with a lot of people. I would tell people that we have social media everywhere, and you can find the Patriot Party. Just put in the Patriot Party on any podcast platform. You can put in the Patriot Party, but the easiest way you can listen to it directly off the website. You can, if you don't have a Spotify, we also have the RSS feed on the website, so you can listen to it directly off the web. We give all the information. The 3 Ps are available for a copy paste printable form, so you can follow along with us as we break things down, and we invite anybody. We by no means do we know everything. We like to sponge up knowledge, and if you have a better idea or you have something that will help us, we encourage that. That's the kind of the conversations we want to have. So I would say the website is the hub. You can get to every social media part. You can subscribe for newsletters. It's thepatriotparty.us. That's thepatriotparty.us. And that's where you can find pretty much anything and get in contact with us. And that's where the DC lawyer and lobbyist, who's pretty big time, he contacted us through there, and then we put him through an interview. So no matter what, if you're just a grassroots person wanting to help with the movement or talk about the movement or ideas, whoever you are, I think the website's probably the best, and then you can get to any other social media from there.
Great. Matt, this has been fun. It's been interesting. A lot of good thoughts there. And hopefully everybody will take a listen and follow what you're doing, because I admire your tenacity to do this, because it's not easy and not inexpensive either. So I appreciate the fact that you're keeping our Constitution in front of people's faces, which is where it needs to be. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on the show. Maybe you have to come on my show. I have to tell you about a new series we're doing. Give you some food for thought and see if you can come up with an idea.
I love it. I love it. Thanks again, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.